Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Vivi and today I'm going to be taking through a comparison of the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077 to the version on Stadia. This comparison is going to be using my own personal gaming rig, which is quite a high spec machine. I'm running an RTX 3090 graphics card, so it's the new graphics card from Nvidia with ray tracing built in. It's an i9 processor, 9th generation. Got 32 gigabytes of RAM, and the game itself is running from an NVMe SSD. I'll put more details on the specification in the description for this video. First, I'm just going to quickly take you through the graphics settings that I've set up for this, because I have put some custom settings in order to try to get a better frame rate and also to get the best balance between visuals and a consistent frame rate. I'm not going to talk you through what every single setting does, because I'm sure there's been lots of videos telling you about the graphics settings within this game, but I'm just going to very quickly click down and go through what I've got set. Obviously, the comparison that I'm making is between a PC which cost upwards of £2,500 to Stadia, which technically doesn't cost you anything for the hardware itself. You obviously pay for the game, but you do for PC as well. In the Stadia options, there are less graphical options to choose from, and I will show you what those look like now. Okay, so now I'm in the Stadia version of the game, and I'm just in the graphics settings screen as well. In the bottom left corner, I've got Stream Monitor turned on. That's because I'm using an extension called Stadia Enhanced. The reason I'm using Stadia Enhanced, it allows you to force your browser to use the VP9 codec and force it to get a 4K stream. 4K stream is only available for Stadia Pro users, which is £10 per month, but essentially you can get the 1080p game for free. The only real graphics option you get is this graphic preset here, which either set to visuals or high frame rate. For a game like this, I always prefer to leave it on visuals. I care more about getting the best graphical fidelity for games like an RPG where I really want to get immersed in the game. If this was a game like Doom Eternal or some sort of, fast-paced shooter, I would probably prioritise high frame rate, but it's nice that this is added into the game. This has been added in by CD Projekt Red. It's not actually anything to do with Stadia actually implementing it, so it does vary by game whether you get this option or not, but where you do get the option, it's a really nice option to have. One option I do wish they gave you, which if you paid really close attention to the graphical run through I had of the PC version, is the option to turn off the film grain. I do think the film grain just adds a little bit of a blurry effect, and I think the game would just look better without it. But other than that, I tend to leave it on these default settings here. So starting with PC version, I'm going to start a new game. And I'm just going to show you the character creation screen, because that's where you'll immediately see some differences. I have chosen the Street Kid life path as well, because I find that that's got some nice lighting effects, which is a nice little comparison between the Stadia and the PC version. So on the PC, you can see that the graphics themselves look absolutely stunning. The hair detail is quite good. You can see, the individual strands quite easily on the character model, and the skin, you can see nice little pores and textures to it. The lighting bounces off it really nicely. One of the biggest differences between the two you'll see is the lighting effects, but that is because obviously I've got ray tracing turned on. The shadow quality is also really nice. You can sort of see the hair casting a shadow onto the character model just there. I'm just going to go put the stats in randomly because they're not too important. And as we load up the game, another thing to consider about the comparison is the load times. So you'll be able to compare the load time of the game on the PC version running from an SSD and the Stadia version also running from an SSD from their servers. As we did with the PC version, I'm just going to be starting a new game, and we're going to go for the Street Kid life path again. So, we're going to bring up our character creation, and we're going to take a look at the hair first. As we mentioned in the previous video, the hair quality was better for the PC. You could see each individual strand. Whilst it looks pretty good here, it looks pretty natural, you will notice that some of the strands just blend together, and at the ends of the hair it's not as well defined. Again, it's a little bit nitpicking, but that's the point of these graphical comparisons, and just make sure to remember the kind of hardware that we're running this on. This can be run on a Chromebook, it can be run on a Chromecast Ultra, it can be run on your mobile phone, so the fact is that given what you need, the cost of entry for the Stadia version of the game, it looks absolutely fantastic. The skin quality is looking pretty good. You're not getting as much definition, for example, in the forehead where you could see the individual pores in the head. You're not quite getting that on the Stadia version. You are still getting that lovely lighting effect, so you're getting the light sort of scattering off, and it does dynamically change as you go around. It just looks a little bit more muted, it's just not quite as natural. But again, it's a very small thing that we're talking about, and you are still getting the hair casting, that shadow on the body, which updates dynamically, as you'd expect from a modern game. So again, I'm just going to increase the stats randomly because I don't plan to actually play through on this one, and I'm just going to show you the load times for Stadia because again this is running an SSD, just not on my machine. On the screen now you'll see that I've got the PC version of Cyberpunk 2077 loading on the left hand screen, and on the right hand screen is the Stadia version. I hit the continue button at the same time on each of these videos, and you'll see whilst there is a slightly higher load time for the Cyberpunk 27 on Stadia, it's not massive actually. They both load really quickly, and one of the biggest problems with the older generation of consoles is the load times, but because it's running on an SSD, Stadia and obviously my case, my PC, both load up pretty bloody quickly. So now let's load into the game. We're going to see the opening cutscene, which V looks in a mirror. And we'll be able to see that the reflection that you get is pretty bloody perfect, to be fair. So just a second. Obviously you can see the light, sort of reflecting off the skin there. There's a bit of subsurface scattering, making it look quite realistic there. And I'm just going to zoom in on the t-shirt. You can see there's a lot of detail on the texture on V's t-shirt, which it just looks absolutely fantastic. The visual fidelity in this game is actually really good. I know it's been having a lot of problems on a lot of the older consoles, but the PC and the Stadia version both look pretty bloody good. Just going to set my nose. I hate this scene. Ugh. That crunch always gets to me. So again, we're just going to have a conversation now with Pepe, and what's really nice to look at is he's got a necklace on, which you can see some of the details of. You can see that there's quite a lot of detail there, the reflections from everything around, and his hand as well has some really nice textures on it. You've got the light reflecting off of it on multiple points, and the ring there as well with nice luminance. One good thing to look at as well is the V on the wall. You can see that the light there is also scattering off in quite a natural way. I am just going to skip through a lot of the conversation because this is not a gameplay video. We're not going to be playing the game through. In fact, we're probably just going to leave the building and then we'll probably leave it there. So I'm just going to go and talk to Kirk. So now we're back over to the Stadia version of the game, and I'm just going to play that opening scene again so that we can just take a look at how it looks when compared to the PC. So I'm just going to load in now, and we'll hopefully then be right in front of the mirror. So again, we can see V's hand. You're getting the lighting effect, getting a pretty good definition on the skin. Again, if you're not looking too closely, you could mistake this for just a lower quality PC version. I'm again going to zoom in on the t-shirt, and you are still getting a really good texture quality on there. You can still see a lot of the detail on V's t-shirt. Not quite as much as you do on the PC. The texture is a little bit lower, but it's not a massive difference between the two. Same with the rest of V's body, for example the hair there. So I'm just going to set the nose again. Oh, I hate that I have to watch that twice. Cool, so we're going to now again talk to Pepe. We're going to take a look at his necklace as he finishes handing us our drink. And again, you'll see that the model itself is just slightly low. I think it's probably got essentially a lower polygon count because it's just a lower quality texture. And again with the hand as well, you're going to notice that the texture quality is just a little bit lower than that on the PC, and the lighting just doesn't quite look as natural. You are still getting those reflections from lighting around, but it's just not quite as high quality. It doesn't look quite as accurate. But considering the fact that, again, we are playing this streamed over the internet from the Stadia servers to my PC in the Chrome browser is amazing.
My bro jumped the joint.
I'm again just going to skip through a little bit here.
Then you're gonna owe me one.
So as you look out into the bar, one thing you'll probably have noticed by now is that there's a higher field of view on the PC version than there is on the Stadia version. You'll see that in a second in the comparison. That's because you have the option to increase the field of view on PC, which you don't get on Stadia. It just means that you get more within your vision as you're walking around, though the outer edges sometimes do warp slightly. I don't notice it that much, but it definitely does warp slightly as you move the camera around. The lighting, though, is fantastic, and that's going to be the biggest difference you're going to notice, is your lighting and your reflections. So as I walk over towards this table here, you'll see that it's got a red light above it, and the light just looks natural. The shadows on the actual character's model as well, as you look at the character who's drinking here, they just seem to line up perfectly, and again, that's the ray trace really kicking in there. You get some nice volumetric modelling of the mist over here. So I'm just going to head up the stairs and go and talk to Kirk.
Hey Kirk. What?
So again, we're skipping dialogue. If you're actually playing the game, I would strongly recommend not skipping anything. Obviously, this is a story game, so you're going to want to listen to the dialogue. It's all very interesting actually as well. So it's something that is probably a faux pas, but obviously we're just doing a graphic comparison here.
No.
So we'll take a look at the lighting here, as we did in the PC version. And what I did point out last time was the accuracy of the lighting. You notice it just looks a little bit more uniform here. It looks a bit more flat in terms of lighting. The shadows aren't quite as natural, so if we just look at this person's model here, you are still getting obviously those dynamic shadows, but they just aren't as accurate as they are on the PC version. But again, that's down to ray tracing, and with Stadia they can always upgrade the hardware in the future to implement ray tracing, which is really nice, and there'd essentially be no extra cost for that implementation in the back end, so you don't see any of that cost. And again, the smoke still looks pretty bloody good. You'd be hard pushed, without knowing that this is the Stadia version, to really notice that it's not running properly from the PC. The performance is just very good. In terms of latency, because that's one of the biggest comments I hear about Stadia, is that there's a high latency. In all honesty, there's not that great a difference in the latency. I have actually had the Stadia and the PC version running simultaneously with the same controller, and the extra lag on the input is minimal. And if you use it wirelessly connected to Wi-Fi, you're going to notice it even less. Obviously, I'm using the USB because you can't control both at once via the Wi-Fi connection, but the latency is really absolutely minimal. So, as I get handed this magazine, I'm just going to pick it up here, and again you can see that the text on the page is pretty crisp. You can read the text even without having to zoom in. There's a little bit of double text, it looks like. It's a bit of an odd effect, but other than that it's perfectly legible. Again, this game is running in 4K, so you would expect to see that. Another thing you'll notice in the comparison between the two is if you look at, for example, this menu here, which has a sort of plastic effect over the top, you can see that the lighting is again acting naturally. As my head bobs, you can see the reflection of the light updating in real time, and it just looks like actual light would react, which it's different from the Stadia version. And also, if you just look at his eye and the text that's appearing on it, it just looks quite crisp.
How am I?
So for the final part of the demonstration, I'm going to take us outside, and we're just going to take a look at how Night City looks in the night.
Cut him some slack.
So again, I'm just going to be skipping through the dialogue again, just to give you the comparison.
Transaction.
So now that we're picking up this document again, you can see that without zooming in, the text does just look a little bit blurry. Now it is legible, But I think maybe if you were to look at it on the 1080 version, or if you were to look at it on a smaller screen, you may not be able to read that very well if you've not got great eyesight. But you can zoom in and you can read it perfectly fine, and the actual text of the game is fine as well. Now you can obviously play this on a mobile phone as well, as using it on your PC or playing it on your Chromecast Ultra on a big screen, and I don't think it would look particularly good in terms of the text on a mobile phone. I don't think it's designed for that, but the fact that you can play it on a mobile phone is ridiculous. So we're just going to take a look at the menu, and I'm just going to move my head around a little bit so you can notice that there isn't that same reflection that you're getting from the plastic effect that we saw on the PC. And again, that's simply down to the lack of ray tracing on Stadia at the moment, which would be a really nice feature if they had it, but I don't think it's necessary, because you do still get a really nice, quality of visual, and your lighting effects are still very good on the Stadia version.
How am I supposed? Kirk. We are.
Glad to hear it. Always said you were a bright bulb. Head to Embers in the Glen. Rick's in the garage. They waiting.
So again, I'm just going to take us outside so we can do a comparison of how Night City looks in its entirety. So as we get outside, you'll just see that the environment looks fantastic. Look up at this building, you see there's a nice level of detail all the way up to the top. You can see that there's some good lighting effects again coming from the sign there, just on the looking at the wall. And one of the things that I really like is the reflection. So just look at this puddle in front of me. You can just see those natural reflections really reflecting what you'd see in real life when you're looking at off into the distance there. And you're just not going to get that on Stadia. Now, having said that, I am using the RTX 3090, which is a £1,600 card. If you can pick it up slightly cheaper than that every now and then, but the version I've got was £1,600, so it's not a cheap piece of hardware. And it really does show, what a PC is capable of doing. So here we are, we can take a look up at the building, and we are still seeing quite a high quality rendering of this building when you compare it to the PC. There are differences, you can notice that the PC version does look a lot more crisp, but again, if you compare the hardware cost of the Stadia version versus the PC, there is just a massive disparity in the costs there. And we look at the lighting effect from this sign. Again, it's just not quite as natural. You are still getting the lighting effect, but it's just not using that ray tracing technology. And one of my personal favourite visuals and my favourite comparisons is this puddle here, for example, which really shows off, the advantages that ray tracing does give you. And I mentioned it before, but I'll mention it again. Stadia could add ray tracing in the future. That will come at no cost to us as the end users, which would be fantastic. With any cloud streaming platform, the advantage is that the hardware can be updated in the future without any change on our end needed. Obviously, if they were to up it to an 8K stream, 120 frames per second, the Chromecast Ultra might not be able to handle that, so you might need to upgrade that. But you'll still be able to get the benefits of stuff like ray tracing or just improved, graphical fidelity, if any enhancements are made on the other end. And the fact that there's zero cost to entry on Stadia, and if you're buying Cyberpunk 2077 at the moment, you're getting that Chromecast Ultra and the controller for free. You are always going to get a better version of the game if you're running a PC of this specification. The value proposition of Stadia is just so much better. If you don't have the money to spend on a high-end game machine like the one that I'm using today, Stadia is probably the best option. When you compare it to the performance that current gen consoles are getting, and even the newer gen consoles are still running a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One version of the game, just with some very minor enhancements. The actual, next gen, so to speak, version of the game isn't going to be released until next year. With that being said, I would probably say that Stadia is, there is a noticeable difference, but it's minor differences between the graphical fidelity of the two. And Stadia is a fantastic option for those people just looking to get a hold of the game and just play it in the best way possible without having to have that extra entry cost. Another massive advantage at the moment is if you do order it in the next few days, you are going to get the Stadia Premiere edition for free. That's included in the price of the game, so you can buy the game on both platforms, but on Stadia you're going to get a Chromecast Ultra and the Stadia controller, which is actually the controller I am using today to record this video. So that's just an extra nice thing that you do get from ordering the Stadia version. And the Stadia version can be used on any hardware as well, so if you've got an older PC, as long as you can access the Chrome browser, which is the version that I'm using is via Chrome. I'm not using the CCU. I actually do tend to get a better performance with the Chromecast Ultra when I'm on Stadia. But the version that I've got is just running through the Chrome browser. I'm using an extension called Stadia Enhanced, as I mentioned before, which allows me to force the game to output at 4K, and if you've got a Pro subscription, I would strongly recommend doing that. But without the Pro subscriptions, the Pro subscription is £10 a month to get that 4K visual quality. Otherwise, you're limited to the 1080p. But for most gamers, 1080p is probably going to be sufficient. And the advantage is you can also play it on your mobile, you can play it on your TV down in the living room using the Chromecast Ultra, and you can use the controller down there. So, in summary, if you've got the hardware to be able to run this on PC is definitely the best platform to run this game on. If, however, you don't have a high specification PC, Stadia is probably your best option. The fact of the matter is it's free to even try it out, so you can just download the Stadia app onto your phone, or just navigate to Stadia on your Chrome browser. You can then access one of the free-to-play games like Destiny 2 or Bomberman, just see how it performs for you, see if you are able to get that stable connection, because it is dependent very much on your internet quality. And no obligation, just give it a go. So that's essentially my conclusion there. I'm going to do the typical YouTuber thing, and if you like this video, please leave me a like and possibly think about subscribing. I think this is probably my first real video. I've done maybe one or two others. I don't remember how many I've got on the channel currently. I could probably check, but nobody's got time for that. But no, honestly, if you do like the video, please do give it that like and subscribe, and feel free to leave a comment below. Give me some feedback, because this is, as I said, a new thing for me, and any feedback is appreciated. Anything I can do to improve the channel would be greatly appreciated. So on that note, I'm going to leave you with this lovely view of Night City. Thank you very much.